be using Perplexity AI.
Got
it's
it.
like you probably get it. Great search platform. I love that. If you validate the problem early on, you can save yourself months of engineering time.
Of how they can get into cybersecurity.
Google, if you're an AI startup, Google Cloud has a great thing where if you're funded or in part of special programs that they are partnered with, you can get not just the typical 100,000 or 150,000 that you would get from the regular cloud program, but having the leads come to us. It was fantastic. It made the sales process a lot easier. In resources, we've probably received almost $100,000 worth of resources. That's why we have it limited. But there's absolutely like our plan is within the next year to actually have it more standardized, so that people can just access it at will. And we're actually in the process of building out our infrastructure to support that too.
The mistakes you can share which you did.
Love what you're doing, and both with the podcast, but also now hearing about your startup. Very excited to see where that goes. So
our podcast, and I really appreciate you taking time from your schedule and doing this. A lot of people do not do this, but you are one of those people, and I really like your company. That's why I reached out to you genuinely. And before getting started, I want you to share in your own words what is your story and how did you get started with Ascentio, and where did this idea come from to make APIs and make it simpler for you as well.
yeah, sure thing. First off, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I mean, when you reached out, you sounded super interested. So, always like having a conversation with someone who's interested in technology and kind of, and not just what we're doing, but technology in general. So, like your channel, like what you're doing, man. As for kind of how I got started, getting to Ascentio was kind of a bit of a journey. I did a lot of work in the corporate world before this. So I did a few years at Cigna, a health insurance company in the States, and I did everything from cybersecurity to solutions architecture and cloud engineering for them. And that was both in the US and the UK. So kind of had this international experience going on. And also within that time, I was getting into entrepreneurship by doing some side projects. So, for example, Mozilla, the company that makes Firefox, they have this competition called Fix the Internet. And one of the first startup things I did was me and my brothers, we applied for this Fix the Internet cohort, built a project, were one of the winners of it. And it was kind of like this sustainability-based project. And it was cool. It felt good to build something from scratch, like our own idea. And even then, my brothers and I, we did something completely different too. We actually built an Amazon business, had some 5 figures of revenue on that. We were an Amazon's choice product. So that was two different ideas of building something. One was purely software and one was an actual physical product. And even though they're so different, it is kind of the same process. It's like you're finding a need, you're building something to meet that need. And for me, it wasn't so much what I was building, it was the building process itself. So that's where I knew, like, okay, I like entrepreneurship, I like building things. And after working for Cigna for a bit, I realized that the corporate, the way that corporate is run, it's very bureaucratic, especially in these large organizations. Cigna, I had a great time there. Don't get me wrong, but it's organization of, I think it's like $200 billion revenue, 150,000 employees. Massive organization. So the individualism isn't as present. Maybe within your projects, but you don't necessarily get to work on what you want to work on. It's kind of the business determining what the need is, and then you building something for them. So when I left, I actually quit my job to start a master's at KTH, Royal Institute of Technology in Sweden. And that was not just a computer science master's, but was a focus. The minor was in entrepreneurship and innovation. And I said, I'm going here because I want to start a business. I wanted to, beef up my computer science skills a little bit too, but the main thing was to start something. And actually the first day of classes I had, my data intensive computing class, I sat next to Renee, who's actually the co-founder of Ascentio, and he's the one that developed the algorithms. And we got to talking, we hit it off. It was a really great time. And kind of from there, we built the company, and our third co-founder, Karin, actually came in through a program between KTH and Stockholm School of Economics. And the three of us have just kind of built it since then. It's been over a year. And it's kind of funny, I knew I wanted to start a business. I didn't know necessarily what that business was, but kind of just through serendipity, I got to a point where I met someone who built something, or the beginning of something so incredible, and kind of just through like the vibes and just the shared desire to kind of build this forward, we've kind of made Accentio to what it is today. So a bit long, but that's kind of, how I got into entrepreneurship, and then also Accentio itself.
Yeah. That's an incredible journey, man. Like a lot of people, the startup founders, they find their co-founders in college only, and you are just one of them. Like very special bonding that the people found in college only, and that's great. Like, what you want to say about that? Like having co-founders from college.
Yeah, so I think this goes just beyond college. It's more so finding a co-founder in an area where you're spending a lot of time with them. So Renee, for example, me and him, we were not just in class together, but we were in projects within those classes together. So we already knew how we worked together. And that is great because, we both had a good way of communication, but then we also had a good work ethic with each other. So that is a great basis to know, hey, you can get into a business with someone like this because you're both going to be able to mesh well together. And while we found that in college, you can find that in work, for example. Like if you're in projects with someone at work, you can get that same exact output. So I think what's great about college is the fact that you're learning something new, and when you're in a startup, you're always going to be dealing with new problems. So if you're in a computer science class or a business class or marketing class, anything, it's kind of nice because you're both able to work on an entirely new project together. And that I think is more realistic than in a business setting, like where you're both working on a predefined project and kind of just working on one component of this overall project. So that's why I think maybe college is a little bit nicer. But at the end of the day, they both kind of share the same utility.
Yes, definitely. And talking about your startup Accentio, I wanted to first of all ask, for those who don't know, like what is the idea of creating APIs that came to your mind, and how that came in your mind first of all? First of all, when did you decide that you want to go all in into this startup? And was there an economic point where you decided that at this point you have made this much money, you just need to go all in and you should build this up?
Sure thing. Yeah. So the algorithms behind Accentio, those were all being run on Renee's desktop. He built these, and they're being run locally, and that's great for testing and research. But if you want to commercialize something, you can't commercialize it without having the APIs that other people can access. Not just for practicality reasons, but there's also security and compliance reasons that go into that too. So for us, it wasn't necessarily an economic point, but it was an inflection point. So we had so many people interested in using the algorithms, and we had at this point gotten a good amount of notoriety. So we won some big competitions, or were finalists in big competitions in Stockholm, and we also had more and more people that wanted to use our algorithms. And we realized, as part-time workers but full-time students, this doesn't really work. We can't handle this demand. So it was more of a demand point that drove us. And we were lucky that, especially in Stockholm, there is an amazing startup resource and like support network. So we had multiple business labs in Stockholm that were supporting us. We had free credits to AWS. We had trainings, mentors. They were giving us leads and connections. All these different things. So even if we weren't getting realistically enough money to support us at that point, we had other types of support that were getting us where we need to go, where our entire infrastructure costs were taken care of, our entire operational costs were taken care of. We were getting credits to these things. If we had problems, we didn't need to hire counsel. We had legal help that we could access. So a lot of those early costs that are associated with things, weren't weren't too much of an issue for us because we had it covered through these partnerships that we became a part of. And I want people, if they're listening, to realize you don't need to be in Stockholm to get a lot of those resources. A lot of those, if you go to any of the cloud providers like AWS, Azure, Google, they have these free credit programs. Azure, for example, we used AWS, but I'll use Azure as a great example. If you were to be part of one of their starter programs, let's say the early tier for around $2,500 or $5,000, that $5,000 in credits isn't just to Azure. It's also to GitHub Pro, LinkedIn Sales Navigator, OpenAI credits, and all those different things. So because these large organizations have so many different tools, you get access to a bunch of these different tools. And individual companies have it too. HubSpot has a startup program. Monday.com has a startup program where you can get discounts or free credits. Stripe, you can get $60,000 in free credits to Stripe if you're a startup for your first year. So there are so many different resources out there where you don't necessarily need $500,000 in an angel round. You can get $100,000 in an angel round, and that can last you just as long because you're getting hundreds of $1,000s in credits from these other programs. So that is a very big thing you have to understand. Is the financial offset actually makes a huge difference if you can find those programs to get into them.
That's the crazy way, man. Like literally, a lot of people, they want to start with free resources. They don't want to put in of their money. So as you shared these things, I'm just triggered to know more about these things. That which were the things that you used for building SNTO, and which were the things that you recommend to people to use, which are really free of cost, and they can scale with that when they're starting out.
Yeah, of course. So we used AWS at Essentio. So we've used about $10,000 in credits for Essentio because luckily our infrastructure costs are quite low because we have such an efficient AI algorithm that the compute needs are actually quite low compared to most AI startups. So 10,000 has been more than enough to keep us going there. But I mean, it's very regular for startups to get hundreds, thousands plus. Google, if you're an AI startup, Google Cloud has a great thing where if you're funded or in part of special programs that they are partnered with, you can get not just the typical 100,000 or 150,000 that you would get from the regular cloud program, but up to $250,000, $350,000 in compute credit. So that is another thing where it's not just the providers providing it across the board to everyone. Certain providers have specialized programs for certain companies. And even non-traditional ones like Cloudflare, people don't usually use Cloudflare as a cloud hosting provider, but you can use them for that and other means. And their startup program, they will actually intro you to investors if you're accepted into that. So that's kind of a neat thing where a lot of the other providers don't do that. But if that's more important to you, maybe you go and you kind of join in with Cloudflare. There are so many resources out there. I think I'll find the specific domain, but I think it's called startupcredits.com, and you can kind of just see all of the different companies that offer startup credits. You might have to do a little bit of work to figure out how to get those, but any company on there would offer startup credits. So definitely use those. But a big way to get access to a lot of them is to join an accelerator or pre-incubator. And a lot of these ones, you don't need to go to a big one. You don't need to be accepted to YC or Antler to get these. Like even a lot of like your university accelerators tend to have partnerships and stuff like this too.
Yes. Although they give money, but I think that they take a big chunk of your business as well.
It depends. So, for example, we were part of two accelerators in Stockholm, and they took zero equity, and they provided us a good amount of resources. So, I'd say in resources, we've probably received almost $100,000 worth of resources for 0% equity. Now, at the same time, for the most part, it wasn't direct investment. So it's not like we got a check for $100,000. It was, hey, we need this help, and they gave us the legal help. They gave us the AWS credits. They gave us funding for a market research report and all these different things. And that came equity free. So there are a lot of equity free programs you can do. And because there are so many of those, I would actually recommend that, especially if you're early on in the beginning, go and do those first before trying to get into an equity program, because there are a lot of them out there that try to take advantage. Unless you're going to a big one like the YCs out there, Neo accelerators, ones like that. It's going to be it's tough if you're not experienced in that domain.
Yeah, definitely. And let's come back to Ascentio. In your LinkedIn bio, you have mentioned sustainable NLP. Yeah. Yes. So let us talk about that in depth, like what you really mean by that, and how your company and you personally are like achieving that goal, and where are you in achieving that goal as well.
Sure, yeah. So when we talk about sustainable NLP, what we mean is, using NLP in a way that makes sense, not just practically, but environmentally. So when we talk about AI, and especially generative AI now, it is so computationally intense that it requires so much compute resources, so much energy. And a big thing there is, if you have a specific need that can be achieved through other means, you will most likely be able to use less compute resources. So we have a very specific product. Ascentio helps people to identify the topics in a piece of text and also the position that is being taken on those topics. So, for example, we worked with like news bias, like we could understand what topics were discussed in a news article and the bias that news article had towards the topic being discussed. Not necessarily left versus right, but also just, let's say, favorability, or did it show disinterest in certain things. So that type of task, you could give it to a generative AI and it could do pretty well, but by using our very specific NLP solution, it's in some cases almost 1,000 times more efficient, computationally speaking. And what's cool about that is not only is it good environmentally, but it also has a business effect too, because since we need so much less resources to achieve the same result, we can do it quicker, or by using less resources. So it costs us less, which means we can bring that on to the consumer, but also it makes sure that they can get a result quicker. So when real-time solutions may matter, you may want to use a solution like ours as opposed to a generative AI. And this goes back to why an API is so essential, because it's much harder for someone to just kind of implement it, import a package, write it all out. If we can let them access our solution the same way they would access OpenAI's API, for example, then it makes it a lot simpler for them to implement this within their own data pipeline or application. So that is, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, definitely, man. Like that turns out well. For saving the resources, and there are lots of news how much resources and OpenAI used to build ChatGPT, and is it really worth it? There were debates on that as well. But sustainable NLP is something that we are not achieving at this moment, but we will surely have some efforts in future. And talking about your projects, I wanted to ask that your Ascentio is not only the project that you have built so far. There must be some of the projects that you did not commercialized, but you have that on your own, and which are really interesting as well. So would like to share some of them as well.
Sure. So I guess you're talking about some of the Mozilla one mentioned before, or the Amazon product. Is that what you're talking about, or
anything project that you have built so far, but that you have not commercialized, but that are really interesting to know to people?
Oh yeah. So I'm actually working with a couple other startups, helping them out, and really cool one is a health. It's a stealth startup right now, but it's in the healthcare space. And what it's doing is it's actually helping to be the intermediary between private healthcare practices and healthcare software companies. So a hospital, for example, has a lot of buying power when talking to these software companies. But what's tough is if you're an individual clinic with just one or two clinics, you don't have that same buying power. So a lot of times you may not actually talk directly to the software vendor. You're talking to a third-party seller that has an extra margin in there that then gets their margin from the software seller. So when we talk about bloated healthcare costs in America, it's in every step of the healthcare system. So what this startup's trying to do is actually kind of group together these clinics into and give them the group buying power necessary to actually have the same buying power as, let's say, a hospital. And by doing this, they can help these clinics get better rates on their systems and actually help pre-vet the software so that the clinics know that they're getting something that they need. So for a lot of these doctors and small clinics out there, they don't have the resources and time to look into these things, and they also don't have in a lot of cases the experience or knowledge to even evaluate them. So it's kind of nice. I really like what that startup's doing.
A lot of people, and most importantly doctors, they are not taught to handle softwares, and that's kind of a thing. Also, talking about Ascentio, when you started out, like, I wanted to ask you that when you start out, how to get the very first users, and how did you get for Ascentio, and most importantly, when you get the very first users, now when you commercialize it, it becomes really hard to make it scalable. You have to put in some money, if possible, do inorganic marketing and all those things. So tell us about how you got the very first users for Ascentio, your own startup. How can someone get that? And next is, how can we grow from just having some very few users to do and cater to a larger audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the big thing here is you should have your users before you build something. And what I mean by that is you should have talked to people, see it, and actually identified the problem before building the solution. So just because you experience something doesn't mean that a bunch of other people experience it, or if they do, experience it the same way. So the things that you personally find most important are not necessarily the things that others may find important. So if you want to get your first early users, make sure you found a problem that a lot of people are experiencing, and two, that problem is a big pain point. Because if, let's say, everyone's experiencing a problem, but they're fine with it, like they can kind of go through and there's no problem, there's no real drive for them to change or get a solution. But if you talk to 20 people and every single one of them says, this makes me want to pull my hair out, then you're onto something. You can see through their emotion. They really hate this problem that they're facing. So if you can build something that helps them with that, I guarantee you that most of them would probably become customers the first time you show it to them.
So also, I was asking about how did you build actually your business? Like, you have got a couple of users now, but once you have got that users, it's really hard to scale to a particular level. So how did you get from that level to what you are actually today?
Sure. So one thing to know about our case is we had a B2B solution. So business to business solution is going to be very different from business to consumer solution in the way that you market it. A B2C platform, you're most likely going to be, using things like Facebook ads and all these other like mass marketing efforts. Whereas with the B2B, you can be much more selective in how you do it. So in our case, the way that we kind of scaled it is we kind of did a bit of PR with it. And what I mean by that is we gained credibility and notoriety in the space that allowed people to say, okay, they have something. So, we worked with 2 main accelerators in Sweden. That was good. Got us some press, got us some notoriety. We won some more competitions. That gave us some notoriety. We started producing these blog posts kind of within niche areas of the AI/ML space. One such one was on that sustainable NLP, where I kind of tried to quantify the the impact of what is called of generative AI and kind of the CO2 impact of those things. And as a result of all these things, we improved our SEO and all that stuff. As a result of all these things, not only did we have a brand that was then made, but people started referring us places. So For example, at some of the labs, Accenture would reach out and say like, hey, who's doing this? Or some of these other major organizations, hey, who's doing this? Investors would reach out. And as a result, we were getting referred because since we made this image that very clear, this is what we do, this is what we care about, they were able to easily recommend us for those places. And that also just helped us get more recognition that then kind of built it up. So in our case, we kind of, instead of going out and searching for customers, we kind of worked with the customers we had, really built on how well we did and how well we're doing, and then kind of made like this this kind of pull-in method where people started reaching out to us. Hey, I heard you're doing this. I saw you're doing this. Can you do it for me? Can you do this for me? And that's really, really good in the B2B space because it is so hard to get a warm lead. So in this case, when we're having the leads come to us, it was fantastic. It made the sales process a lot easier and made the ability to close a lot easier because we didn't have to earn credibility. We already had it. So you didn't need that intro call. You didn't need the follow-up call and all these emails. So if you can do that, where you can build that credibility in other people's eyes before you even interact with them, you would win. You will win a lot of the time. And it's tough. It's very tough to do it, but it's very worthwhile if you do it right.
That's a very good advice, like Zach, because the thing is, like as you said, you have gone completely through organic marketing and word of mouth marketing and all those things. And the thing with that happens is because people are coming to you, you're not going to them for selling your stuff. It's literally that you have that upper hand in all those things, and because of that you can even charge them a premium fee because they are coming to you because of their need, and because they find something in you, a great potential. That's why they are reaching out to you. That is the best advantage of having the warm leads, because they can be literally your premium users as well. And one of the interviews of Sam Altman, he basically said that you build your startup so much interesting that people should themselves refer to other people, and that's the how startup should be. People should not should market that through inorganic marketing, should not pay money in going through the marketing and all those things. Your product should be that much good that people literally share with
100%.
others.
I mean, there's a great application I've been using, Perplexity AI.
Got it.
You probably get it. It's a great search platform. I love that thing. So literally in conversations with people, I'll be like, have you used Perplexity? Like, have you done this? It's free marketing. Like, I've probably gotten them 10, 20 users just because I like the product so much, so that's great.
Yes, like, in our group as well, like with students and our friends, Perplexity has become the standard. People are literally like kind of shaming you for not using Perplexity and using Google for searching out the things. The founder of Perplexity also said that they really want to replace Google because he is not in something like chatbots thing, all those things. He want to replace Google because Google is like a search engine, and they want to redefine the searching, how you search on Google. Yes. Let us come back to Accentio now, and let us talk about some finance and economics. And I wanted to really know that how many users you currently have.
Gotcha. So I hope you don't mind, but it's like the user statistics and all that stuff.
Okay.
I can't share those currently just because we're it's a fundraise round, so
I saw the post on LinkedIn.
I can't keep those out loud right now. But what I can say is, I can talk through the business model and kind of how we came to the business model we chose.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Yeah.
Sure. So in the beginning, when we were doing these projects, the projects were fixed projects. So, when we didn't have the API, it was, okay, you have this, we have the ability, you have this problem, we have the ability to solve it with our own thing. Give us the data, give us all the stuff, we can do it. That's kind of how we proved that, our solution worked. And it was quite simple, we were willing to take just this fixed price in exchange for for proving that we had something. Now, when it comes to the API, the way that we're pricing it is based off the way that people in the market are comfortable paying. So a lot of people are using OpenAI, Cloud, all these other API solutions, and they're used to paying per tokens and all that stuff. We don't use tokens in the way that we price it, but we use the same model of how you pay for tokens. Instead, we use text units.
Okay.
So because people are already comfortable with that type of pricing method, that is how we ended up coming to ours.
So what's the pricing of that APIs?
No, sorry, about the APIs.
Oh yeah, so that's what I was saying. The pricing depends on what is being used.
Oh, yeah. So it is very personalized for everybody. Yeah. So because like it is very personalized, don't you think that you will get some scalability issues? Because the thing with personalization is the more people grows, the more you have to put in the efforts for each and every person. You know what I'm saying? Because when you want to make it scalable, you don't need to like kind of have the personalization part, and that too at a great extent. So what's the take on that?
Absolutely, yeah. But right now we are purposely limiting the projects that we take on, because being an early company, like we want to make sure that before we scale it out, we have the means to scale it out properly. And remember, this is an entirely new technology we've built too. So it's not like there's a playbook on how to scale it out the proper way. So as a result, what we're doing is we're making sure that the projects we take on, we have the capacity to take them on. And because you do need, at least in this early stage that we're in, that bit of personal touch, that's why we have it limited. But there's absolutely, like, our plan is within the next year to actually have it more standardized, so that people can just access it at will. And we're actually in the process of building out our infrastructure to support that too. So that is actually something we're actively working towards right now.
That's interesting, because I have asked this question to a couple of people out there and who have built startups and all those things. So they also tell me that after some point you can't really have a lot more personalized things for each and every user. You got to keep the things that are really useful, and you got to get rid of the things that does not make that much sense to users, and they don't really have that use case of that things as well. Scalability is very important issue. That's the problem with that service agencies, because service agencies focus on each and every user and they put in focus for a while, and that really suffers because service agencies cannot grow after a certain point. Now let us say like you have built your startup from college itself. So for someone who is building startups in college, who is building things in college, what things that he or she needs to keep in mind when he is starting out, the mistakes you can share which you did, and the kind of interesting things that you've gone through in your journey. So majorly talk about the mistakes that people should avoid.
So number one, validate before you build.
Yes.
We came into this, my co-founder, he had been developing these algorithms for 2.5 years.
Oh my God.
And, he had a very clear reason for why he was developing the way he was. And it took us a few months before we didn't change things much, but we shifted just a bit. It wasn't a full pivot, but it was a shift. And that is when we actually started getting traction. So if you validate the problem early on, you can save yourself months of engineering time, And then when you do build, don't over-engineer. I mean, quite literally, you can build something that just demonstrates what you want, or is an MVP. And sometimes you don't need to build to have an MVP. And engineers, it doesn't work in their mind. They don't get it. But for example, if you are building a platform where it's a marketplace and you're trying to get this group to buy from this group, you don't have to build the marketplace first. You can connect someone in this group to someone in this group and make a sale over email. And you've just proven that this group wants to buy from this group. Boom, that's your MVP. Then you have your next thing. It's like, hey, I made like this little Facebook group, right? And these people are connecting to these people. And they're buying from each other. So you've proven now that a marketplace exists. Now you're saying I need the money so I can build the practical marketplace that connect everyone here. Great. You validated that you can sell. You validated that people want to buy, and even without your help are searching out ways to do it. And now you know that marketplace makes sense to build. So validate, and choose the easy way of confirming before building. Those are the two biggest things.
You know some of the quick tips, quick things that a lot of people do on YouTube, and those guys are really building cool stuff. And that is like, you go to acquire.com, you filter out the startups which are having a great valuation, let us say 100k or 500k. Then you combine the solutions of multiple startups all together. You can check the reviews, you can check what the people are actually demanding, and then you can build on the things that startup do not have, but your startup will have that, your product will have that. So build something, softwares like parts of softwares that people are actually demanding, and that's how you can get to that valuation as well. Yes.
Those things.
Exactly. And reviews are a great place to start for finding those problems, but there's no better thing than actually talking to the people experiencing that problem. So if you see someone who posts something and the problem they're having, reach out to them. Just send a message. Hey, I was having this problem too. Or, hey, I find this problem so weird. I'd love to hear more about it. Boom. Now you have a customer interview, right there. And you can hear directly what the problem is. Way more than they'll probably send in 200 characters in a review,
A lot of people are just from acquire.com, I'm talking about that, and they just combine one or two startups, their different ideas, and they check out the reviews, what they do not have, what the people are actually demanding from that startup. Is it their pricing? Is it the more features that they want? And is it fundamentally the core idea is wrong of that software? So these guys are just focusing on reviewing, they are focusing on the valuation, and they are building your then own softwares and companies.
And honestly, that's all you need.
Yes.
You don't need to be an AI engineer to build something that people like.
Definitely. I wanted to ask you, sir, and this is very interesting because recently there have been applications like Find AI, we have Claude AI, which are really putting in efforts and making the work easy for software developers and people out there. ChatGPT has become very generalized, but there are tools which are specifically coming for coding and programming. So I wanted to ask you, and also in one of the interviews I heard that of the founder of NVIDIA, and he literally said that people don't need to code now in future, they just need to learn English, and they can make whatever they want. So do you think that programming will end in future, or what's your take on that, and what the changes will be because of these tools? Because just think on that, because you can code in English, that's the greatest advantage you will have, and in general people can also code. And what's your take on that?
Yeah. So, he's absolutely right for the most part. So, me, even though I have a lot of technical experience, I wouldn't say, I'm a expert software engineer, right? And so something that would have taken me a couple of days to build, I can do in 30 minutes now. And it's not even perfect, with the way that things are. And so now imagine someone who has no experience at all, they could probably do what would take them 6 months to learn in a matter of a couple of days, just because even with current tools. So I agree that, in the future you don't need to know how to code in order to build. But one big caveat I would say is there is still going to be a huge need for the very, very good engineers. And the reason for that is, you need to know what to ask for. So it's not just the matter of being good at English, it's being good at English in the specific domain you're working in. And a software engineer knows how to, that is very versed in what they're building, can ask the right questions to get the correct input. And they'd be able to evaluate, hey, this code output isn't optimal. and then just write the next query. Hey, can you optimize this one section over here? Maybe do this. And boom, instead of them having to take 20, 30 minutes to make that optimization, just takes them 10, 15 seconds on a query. So, but it was their expertise that allowed them to ask that follow-up and get that.
Yes,
So
yeah.
I believe that is still
Definitely.
going to be important.
That's a good point, although. Sorry, I wanted to also ask about cybersecurity. Yeah, so you have mentioned that as well, and ethical hacking. That's kind of a very popular kind of buzzword in India. What's happening? A lot of my friends, people out there, they are 18, 19, 17, even 16. They are kind of just triggered by this thing like ethical hacking and all those stuff. So they are getting into this stuff, but they don't really have a roadmap, where to start from, how to start, which tools to use, and how to end up actually. So what's the roadmap for them to get into cybersecurity and get further in that? And firstly tell us how to learn that, and then you can tell about how to be, what they need to learn after that.
So when it comes to
Yes.
cybersecurity, it's tough because a lot of the exploits that are used are so tiered on multiple things. There's network intrusion that then gets to your operating system, that then gets to all the stuff. So you need to have a good general knowledge in order to do cybersecurity. So I would say if you're getting into it, first build a general IT knowledge.
Okay.
And there's certifications you can get on that. Microsoft and all these big companies have these general trainings that you can do. And you don't need to be an expert. You just need to have familiarity with a lot of these things. Because having familiarity with the operating system, with network controls and all these different things, even if you don't know how to use them perfectly,
Yes.
is more than enough to get started in cybersecurity. Because you just need to understand how stuff works. But once you do that, I would say a very good certification to get is the CompTIA Security Plus. Is an entry-level security cert that almost every security analyst position is going to ask for.
Okay.
And what's also good about it is it's very general. It talks about security in a very general sense, those operating system securities, network stuff. And then once you do that, to get more advanced, I think the most important thing is understanding of network operations. So networking in general. Just because that is the main point of intrusion, and it is one of the biggest things you're going to be analyzing as a security analyst. That's my advice, but a lot of people are going to do things differently.
Yes.
Get into different areas. But that's for general security. If you're interested in AI security, a big thing is going to be understanding something called SQL injection, which is the just because those same exact tactics are being used to exploit prompts. And as AI and I guess I'll give a quick explanation of what SQL injection is for anyone there. SQL, as you know, is a database, and what you could do is if someone is asking something or writing an input and you're not properly sanitizing that information on its way in, they can kind of structure their query in a way where it's actually going to bypass your controls, and it can create things in your database, take things out, get all of the information, even stuff you're not supposed to do. And you can kind of use those same tactics on a prompt for an LLM like ChatGPT and Claude. And there's been some great papers that came out recently too about these guys. They were able to, this research group was able to use ASCII art to bypass the security controls on almost every single major LLM on the market. So there's a lot of different ways.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was
That's
really,
crazy,
really
man.
cool how they did it too.
Yeah, and that would be great to start out for any beginner. That would be a perfect, simple overview of how they can get into cybersecurity. And I just wanted to ask, what is the perfect or good duration to learn ethical hacking?
Are you talking about from scratch with no
Let's
IT
talk
experience?
about having no IT experience.
No IT experience. Let's talk about that.
Okay, if you have no IT experience, I would say if you're really, really skilled, you're going to be putting 40, 50 hours a week into studying and practicing and doing practical labs, you could I think the minimum would be 6 months to a year, just because there is
Okay.
so many things you're going to have to know. But I'd say over the course of 2 years or so, you could probably become a decent ethical hacker from zero if you are putting that full-time effort into it. Realistically, cybersecurity is just so broad and so intense that I don't think you would be a quote-unquote good hacker without at least a few years of IT
4 years,
experience.
yeah.
It
Few
is.
years.
It is definitely just such a complex and deep
Yes.
industry, cybersecurity. That's why most people, they don't start in cyber. They end up in cyber.
Yeah.
They start with somewhere else and then they
Yes.
get into it.
Actually, the people
that's essentially-
who don't have the IT experience, they don't really get into the ethical hacking stuff, because the thing is, people start with web development first of all, and then they go into AI stuff. They learn about data science, they learn about databases, backends, all those things, and then when they become bored and they want some difficulty, they then go to cybersecurity, because they already have got so much experience and they can easily handle cybersecurity now.
What's funny enough is I think the best starting point is actually
Okay.
to do IT support, because people tend to be the weakest link in cybersecurity. And when you work in IT support, when I was in university, I did it all 4 years while I was there. I worked for the tech center at my uni, and it's just great because you finally understand how people can get tricked, how little some people know about technology, and how people who do know a lot about technology can still fall victim to certain things. And it's also just very general, because you're doing everything from help people on their phones to their emails to all these different things. So it's a great way to get access to a bunch of different technologies, but also, more importantly, how people interact with their technology. And I think understanding that is so important.
Yes,
to
definitely.
cybersecurity.
That's a good point, by the way.
About that. And that was really great talking to you, Zachary. Like that was really people like you on the podcast, and yeah, that's really great having you on this podcast, man.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you very much.
thank you very much. It was great being here. Really appreciated the questions. Really appreciated the discussion. Love what you're doing, man, both with the podcast, but also now hearing about your startup. Very excited to see where that goes. So please keep me updated with that. And
Sure.
let your listeners know if they ever have any questions or anything. Feel free to reach out. You can place my LinkedIn in the or some of my contact in the show notes or whatever. Always happy to have a chat with anyone.